Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The councillors are all present now, so we have a quorum and we can commence. The Planning Committee, just go through. I'm Councillor Andrew Katos, I'm the chair of the committee. I'll go through a few procedural matters and then we'll get into the proceedings. So first of all, acknowledgement of country. The committee acknowledges the Wadda Wurrung people as traditional owners of the land, waterways and skies. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging. We acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the Greater Geelong community today. I'll introduce the councillors who are present. We have Councillor Emma Sinclair, Councillor Chris Burson, Councillor Rowan Story, and online we have Councillor Trent Sullivan and also Councillor Eddie Contell who are present. Officers who are present, we have Sally Beers as Statutory Planner, Rory O'Loughlin as Team Leader in Statutory Planning, John Rush, Coordinator Statutory Planning, Joanne Van Slageren, Manager of City Development, and also Jacqueline Douglas, Manager of Council and Corporate Governments. We have apologies from Councillor Stretch Contell, Councillor Anthony Aitken, Councillor Ron Nelson, Councillor Elise Wilkinson, and also Councillor Melissa Cadwell. Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest? No? Now, just need the confirmation of the previous two Planning Committee minutes. First one held on the 26th of June last year and 27th of February this year. Can I please have a mover of those minutes? Yep. Councillor Story mover, Councillor Burson seconded. All those in favour? Yep. That's carried. I'll go through the procedure of this meeting today. So it is a formal meeting of council, so the rules of council do apply to this meeting. So the procedure for the hearing this evening will be the council officers will present a brief summary and a written report to the committee. The panel may ask questions of the council officer. The objectors and submitters will detail their concerns to the committee, and there is a 3-minute time limit for each objector or submitter. So there's quite a few people tonight, so I will be enforcing that 3 minutes because there's approximately 20 people wish to speak. The panel may ask questions of the objector or the submitter during their presentation. The applicant will detail their application and respond to any objector submitter concerns to the committee, and they have about a 5 to 10-minute time limit for the applicant. The panel may also ask questions of the applicant. The panel will further discuss the application and make a decision. The decision of this committee is final. It is a decision of council acting under delegated authority. Anyone who is aggrieved by the decision of this committee, they may appeal to VCAT in Melbourne, and our staff can assist with the process. And just one thing further, I understand there's a lot of emotion tonight. I'd like everyone to be respectful of each other, of the council officers and of the councillors who are here listening at the Planning Committee. And I do have the ability, if things get a bit unruly and out of hand, to actually clear the gallery. I don't want to do that, but I'm just saying I know there's a lot of emotion here, so please, everyone please be respectful of each other, okay? So first of all, which council is presenting? Joey? Sally, I'd ask you to please present on behalf of the council officers. Also, sorry, one thing, Sally, just so you're aware, when it's questions, the councillors can ask questions. It's not a question forum between submitters, objectors, for you to ask each other questions or questions of council. The questions are for the councillors to ask in order to make a judgment on the information that's being provided to us today. So please continue, Sally.
The subject site is located on the southern side of Kikanya Avenue in Clifton Springs. It's a regular shaped allotment with approximately 596 metres squared in size. The site contains a single dwelling and shedding, and since purchasing the property in September 2023, the owners have undertaken...
Excuse me, Councillor Katos.
Yes, Councillor Fontel. Right, Ed? you're having difficulty hearing, Councillor Contell.
Yes, both Councillor Sullivan and I are finding it a bit difficult to hear. At the very least, if you could put the mic closer to when you speak, maybe that'll help. Not sure.
Thank you, Councillor Contell.
That again?
That's much better.
Okay, that's good, thank you. The subject site's located on the southern side of Kaganya Avenue in Clifton Springs. It's a regular shaped allotment of approximately 596 metres squared in size. The site contains a single dwelling and shedding. Since purchasing the property in September 2023, the owners have undertaken buildings and works to establish a dog breeding business on the land. These works include converting the existing garage and the outdoor areas into dog pens. To date, these buildings and works have not received planning approval. However, these works form part of the application to be considered. The application states that there are only two dogs currently kept on site at any one time, and therefore no planning permit is currently required for this use. It's relevant to note that the applicant operates their business at 142 Bayshore Avenue and 137 Bayshore Avenue in Clifton Springs. These properties are located approximately 160 metres to the north of the subject site in walking distance. So with respect to the dog breeding at 142 Bayshore Avenue, Council considered an application for a certificate of compliance relating to existing use rights. Council ultimately resolved to refuse that application, and the applicant has exercised their rights to appeal this decision at VCAT. So the subject site's located in a residential street in a general residential zone. Due to the shape of the allotment, it abuts 4 residential properties. In the broader context, the site forms the northern part of the Clifton Springs established residential area and is set in a suburban street characterised by a predominance of similarly low-rise 1 to 2 storey detached single dwellings. So it's relevant to note that the lot sizes in the area generally range from 500 to 600 metres squared, and the zone, however, supports more intensive residential development in this area. So over the coming years, there'll be an increase in medium density development in this area. So the application seeks approval to keep and breed 5 domestic animals, dogs on the site, being Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, Toy Poodles and Cavoodles. And this is the maximum number of dogs that can be applied for in a residential zone. It's expected that the dogs might deliver up to 8 litters in a 12-month period. It's also proposed to keep up to 2 litters of puppies on site at any one time. A litter might typically comprise of 3 to 5 pups, and the pups will be kept on site till the age of 3 months. So if this application is successful, the applicant has advised that they will relocate their dog breeding business from 142 Bayshore Avenue to the subject site, and they propose to only keep 2 animals at their property at 142 Bayshore and 5 animals at their property at 36 Kaganya Avenue. So the proposed use will be conducted within the existing dwelling and in the former garage. The former garage incorporates 3 enclosed pens with access to outdoor spaces along the eastern side and rear of the converted garage. An additional 4th pen is located in the laundry of the dwelling, and the laundry is to have a doggy door, which is to allow access to the outdoor space, and this will house 2 dogs. The overall care of the dogs will be the responsibility of the owner, Miss Whiteside, who resides at 142 Bayshore Avenue. An operations manager trained by the owner would reside in the dwelling on site. The operations manager would be responsible for the care of the dogs. The owners would regularly attend the property to supervise and oversee the dogs' care. So the adjoining property at 8 Juddy Road is the closest neighbouring property to the indoor and outdoor pens with the converted garage. Their habitable room windows are located approximately 5.5 metres from the enclosed pen, and their backyard adjoins the outdoor pens. So this application was accompanied by an acoustic report and a domestic animal management plan with the details discussed in my report that explains the proposed operations and management controls to be put in place. The application was referred externally to the EPA, the Corangarite Catchment Management Authority, Barwon Water, and internally to Council Local Law's Animal Management Department, Environmental Health, Waste and Engineering departments. All departments have not objected to this application subject to conditions on permit if one was issued, but that said, local laws have outlined that barking dogs are a significant concern to neighbours, and they have received numerous complaints about barking dogs on the subject site and also other properties owned by the applicant. So as part of the process, the application was advertised, and as a result, 19 objections were received, mainly from residents located in close proximity to the site. In addition, 2 letters of support were received, and we also received 2 additional letters late today of support, which have been provided to the councillors. And the applicant also included 7 letters of support with their submission. Objections received include the following: that the use is not appropriate in a residential area, noise from barking dogs, inadequacy of the acoustic report, light spill, odour and potential for vermin, on-street parking and increased traffic. The business is run in conjunction with other properties at 142 Bayshore and 137 Bayshore Avenue. Dogs associated with this business are transported between the properties, which further impacts the amenity of the area, increasing the scale of the business in the residential area. If the application is approved, any permit would be hard to enforce, given that the applicant operates this business from nearby properties. The business is not managed properly. No assurance that the on-site manager will be present on site. The overall care of the dogs would be the responsibility of Miss Whiteside, who doesn't reside on the site, and property devaluation. So my report assesses this application in accordance with the planning scheme provisions and determines that, on balance, this application does not adequately address the decision guidelines in the scheme. As such, it's recommended this application be refused for the following reasons. Whilst it's noted that an application can be lodged for dog breeding in a residential area, there are a very limited number of tribunal cases that support this land use in a residential area. More often than not, these types of businesses are more commonly found in a farming zone or on land where there are sufficient buffers to mitigate amenity impacts such as from noise and odour. The scheme does allow for smaller scale dog breeding businesses, up to 5 dogs, to be located in a general residential zone. It's however important that any application demonstrate that the use will not impact the residential amenity of the area, and the use provides a benefit to the surrounding residences. Residential amenity is assessed to a much higher standard in a residential setting than in a farming zone. It's our position that the planning submission provides no confidence that the residential amenity will be maintained as a result of this land use, particularly in regards to noise emissions. The acoustic report submitted with this application is misleading, as it was not undertaken on the subject site. It was undertaken at the applicant's property at 142 Bayshore Avenue, and this property has a completely different site context to the subject site. Therefore, it has a real potential to produce different results than if the acoustic report was undertaken on the subject land. We also note that the sporadic noise was not tested or considered in the acoustic report. Rather, the report notes noise emissions are based on an average noise impact over a 30-minute period. Noise made from dogs, however, is sporadic and behavioural. Sporadic barking can create short impulse noises that may occur infrequently or a series of short bursts from one or more animals in sequence. This noise can create a significant amenity concern in a residential area and should have been tested. The acoustic qualities of the overnight pens in the converter garage were also not tested in the acoustic report. We, however, note the acoustic qualities to be highly relevant given its location to the open space and habitable room windows of neighbouring dwellings. Adjoining neighbours have lodged noise complaints related to dogs barking, howling and whimpering on the site at night. This sporadic noise has caused them distress and lack of sleep. The acoustic report should have addressed this issue. The acoustic report did not address noise levels associated with litters that are present on site or when the dogs are on heat. These activities, however, can change a dog's behaviour. Neighbours note heightened noise emissions during these periods. This also needed to be tested, given 8 litters per year are proposed on site. Notwithstanding the above, it's important to note that even if the acoustic report was amended to address these issues still remain. As previously stated, a review of the VCAT cases referred to in the body of my report have only approved a very limited number of dog breeding businesses in a residential area. The majority of these scenarios are located on larger residential allotments where larger buffers are likely and normal residential activities would typically not arouse the dogs. In addition, a key consideration in granting retrospective approvals at VCAT relate to the fact that there were no complaints, objections received regarding dog barking. This is likely because sporadic barking is hard to control on smaller residential allotments and creates an amenity concern. The acoustic report submitted with this application links the control of noise to the effectiveness of an on-site manager to control dog behaviour and barking. It's however noted that an on-site manager has not been able to prevent dogs from barking or prevent complaints from being received on site. Neighbours have stated the use of their yards can arouse the dogs barking, and this impacts upon their amenity. The sporadic nature of dog barking is hard to control in a residential allotment of this size, and this application proposes to increase the number of dogs on site from 2 to 5, being the maximum number of dogs in a residential area. If dogs can't be controlled with only if the noise can't be controlled with only 2 dogs on site, it's hard to conclude that a site manager will be able to control noise of 5 dogs. So the subject site and surrounds are located in a general residential zone that's capable and encouraged for future residential growth. And if the use is supported, this land use has the real potential to create further amenity conflict as residential development in this area intensifies, thus impacting upon the amenity of both current and future generations. We consider that this use is more appropriately located in a farming zone or on land where appropriate buffers to sensitive uses can be provided. A larger property would also enable the applicant to locate their entire business on one site rather than use numerous residential properties. It is acknowledged that the applicant rightly points out that there is a community benefit as part of the overall business. Letters of support clearly highlight the benefits of this business to the wider community. Any benefit to the wider community, however, does not outweigh the disbenefits to those in the immediate vicinity. The scheme strongly supports residential uses and amenity to have rank over non-residential uses. Local residents do not benefit from this business on a daily basis, and their amenity is threatened. And there's no demonstrated need to locate this business in a residential area. So for the reasons I've listed above and in the body of my report, it's respectively requested that this application be refused. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Do any of the councillors have questions? Thank you. We'll now proceed with the objectors first. So if I could ask Annette Bodie to come forward, please. Just a reminder, 3 minutes for everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Annette. Please take a seat.
To council. All right. Thank you. I'm Annette Bodie, and I wrote this letter over a year ago, 24th of March 2024, months prior to being informed about a permit application. I'm writing of my concern for a puppy breeding business being built on my fence line next door at 36 Kanyanya Avenue, Clifton Springs. The previous owners had a shed in that position, but I wondered if there had been a permit issued for it to be converted to a puppy breeding business, as I've not seen any paperwork from council as to if I have objections. I do object to this shed being converted to the breeding business, as this is a residential area and it is being constructed within 5.4 metres of 2 guest bedrooms and 9 metres from my sunroom. If there were puppies snuffling, crying, yapping and barking, it would all be heard from my bedrooms and sunroom, as well as my outdoor entertainment area. I feel I couldn't open any windows under those circumstances. I'm also concerned about the odours that will emanate from a breeding facility, not only to my living areas, but also my back entertainment area that extends from my sunroom to the back fence where the kennels are located. The owner of the house came to my front door in November 2023. And she said she'd bought the house behind me in Kanyanya Avenue to put her manager in to breed puppies. But I was unable to consider what she was presenting me with at the time, as I was preparing a memorial service for my brother. Council is welcome to send someone to my place to see the work done on the shed and to consider my objection. Thank you. To sum up, I'm puzzled how, in a residential area on land less than half an acre, this could even be considered. My further letters of objection have expanded on my concerns, especially since there's been 5 dogs already there at different times. Thank you.
Thank you, Burnett. Any questions? Thank you. Brian Rossi.
Yeah, I live across the road from the proposed dog breeding business. I've lived there for 22 years in peace and harmony. It's a quiet neighbourhood. I had hoped to live there until I put the wooden overcoat on. Firstly, I'm concerned about the welfare of the animals. I'm going to put my glasses on. To be kept there. It's a quiet residential area and not a fit and proper place for dog breeding. I'm also concerned about the value of my property and other properties in the area will drop. The applicant or the council, will they compensate? I know this to be true because I'm a qualified agent's representative and I have a certificate to sell real estate with the REIV. If the council grants a permit, I would like a reduction in my rates and that of the other properties in the area of 36 Kanyanya Avenue or 36 Kanyanya Avenue charge commercial rates. The discharge of animal waste as it enters the sewer, the applicant has informed me, is illegal. If it doesn't, it's a health hazard. What happens to the leftover dog faeces, food, bones, etc.? Will they be kept on the property? If so, it's a health hazard. The barking and wailing of newborn puppies and barkings of dogs is also a concern, as is the mouse and rat problem, which may increase, and it's there now because I've observed rats coming from there across to my place. Parking in Kanyanya Avenue is already tight, especially near the corner of Jetty Road where the permit is proposed. The street is narrow and it's used now to enter the Kerr Lewis development. The hours of operations too is a concern, 24/7, in excess of 90 hours per week in the applicant's adverts. Also the training and the knowledge of the house sitters in relation to managing the dog breeding. I have witnessed 5 different house sitters since January 2024. How has 36 Kanyanya Avenue been allowed to operate for over 12 months without the necessary permits and inspections? If the council approves this application, it has a duty to enforce the regulations and carry out the necessary inspections and attend all complaints. It is not a fit and proper place for dog breeding as a quiet, peaceful residential area, and to grant a permit, council would be disregarding the surrounding ratepayers and the animal's best interest. It should not proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Heather Camilleri.
Councillors for hearing us this evening. I've got 3 points I wanted to bring up. Registered versus unregistered dogs. The business operator is selling a mixed breed of dog and is unable to register these dogs through Dogs Victoria. What does this mean? It means that dogs used in the business are not regulated or monitored by any organisation. A breeder that has a purebred dog must comply with regulations set out by Dogs Victoria, which has restrictions on the number of litters a bitch can have in its lifetime and the frequency of the litters produced. Without this in place, a bitch can have as many litters puppy breeders desire. Puppies can be microchipped for sale, however, this is more for the purpose of owner registration and not for the recording and monitoring of the number of litters a bitch is producing. When establishing a business, following regulations, when establishing a business is not just common practice, but a requirement that a business applies for a permit before setting up the utilities. As a ratepayer, you cannot build a home or a carport before having a permit to do so. However, this appears to have been what's happened at 36 Kanyana. Tradespeople have been seen coming and going by locals in the neighbourhood prior to the notice to apply for a permit was on the fence. Dogs have been seen coming and going from the property as well. This is from the business operator who has held one of the highest standings in local government and would be well aware of the correct procedures in establishing not just this, but any business. How would the business be monitored? The application is for 5 dogs. Even if there was 4 bitches and 1 dog, there is a possibility of being 48 consecutive weeks where there are puppies on a premises. Third point, council allowing such an application in residential area. How is it that council can even consider the application of a dog breeding business to be set up in a harmonious residential area in the first place? Where is the consideration for the people that pay their rates and abide by local laws? To run a business that could have maybe 30 puppies and dogs at one time while waiting for sale and collection on a regulation-sized house block seems to be the most pressing question as to how this is in the interest of the community. If this application ends up at VCAT, does the applicant process to operate pending an appeal? This should not be allowed. A hearing could take up to 2 years to set a hearing date. The fact that council has allowed a business to operate for even 12 months and not acting on a complaint received by a neighbour or an adjoining property also needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. James Neeson.
Firstly, thank you to the councillors and the staff of Geelong Council for their work. We live in a residential area and it's zoned as such, with long-standing bylaws having been put in place in years gone past to protect the residents of the area and to help create harmonious neighbourhoods. These bylaws have been ignored to date at great cost to the council's time, staff and resources, as well as creating disquiet in our area. There is mention of veterinary support for this business. This should be taken as being skewed for the benefit of the breeder as well as the veterinary business, protecting further business opportunity. The property in question has 4 fence-line neighbours and is on a compact block with little relief of noise from the dogs, from whelping noises, odours, management of the animals, cleaning and so on, feeding, and is in effect a health concern, if only a mental one for those poor people nearby. The waste from the animals. Usually dog runs are washed down each day with the runoff going into the stormwater system and in turn into the waters of our Port Phillip Bay. This runoff will inevitably contain urine and faeces, both of which contain pathogens and microorganisms such as viruses and bacteria, which can cause disease according to a publication by the EPA. In an EPA document on the stormwater pollution, the EPA classified animal waste to contain nutrients, in their words, dog poo, oxygen-demanding substances and microorganisms, as stated before. They say that everyone should take action to reduce stormwater pollution, including the decisions made by Council. Commercial breeding should do its part too, and should be in a commercial environment with adequate bunding, monitoring and treatment equipment to help with the reduction of stormwater pollution and the impact on the amenity of neighbourhoods. The water at the Clifton Springs beach is almost unswimmable, and this sort of business is only contributing to the mess that beach has become in the past few years. It could well be that with 5 breeding dogs with litters of 6 pups each, that this property will have around 35 dogs on site for 3 months, as I just heard, of the year, and that's only if they're restricted to 1 breeding cycle each, let alone the number of people coming to inspect the dogs and pups. I restate my objection where one person wants to make a profit at the expense of those around them in our neighbourhood, and I can only see that this will, as has already proven, cause further workloads and costs on the staff and the council at the expense of ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Norman and Ingrid Stuckey, with Norman to speak.
Councillors, council staff, fellow objectors and applicants. City of Greater Geelong, part of the mission statement is, Geelong is regarded as a safe and harmonious place to live where quality of life is not impacted by irresponsible pet owners. My wife and I live at 144 Bayshore Avenue, Clifton Springs. We have suffered barking from 142 Bayshore Avenue since we finished building our house in 2016. We don't wish to suffer from barking at 36 Kenyana as well. From the council report, the proposal on page 21, under number of litters, I quote, during the birth to 10-week growing period, a litter and mother would be isolated from other dogs and or cared for off-site. Where is each litter going to be for those 10 weeks? Who is going to have to put up with these dogs? There was no information in the application. This is not a relocation of the business. This is an expansion. They have also been permitted to have 2 breeders at 142 Bayshore Avenue. So in total 7 breeders. Plus, if you think about it, there's an extra mother away on rotation all the time. That makes 8 dogs, 7 females, 1 male. This is a large-scale dog breeding program and should be located on several hectares. Staff, page 21, I quote, the overall care of the dogs would be the responsibility of Ms Whiteside, who resides approximately 160 metres from the subject site and would be available when needed. What is she going to do when needed while away for 4 to 5 months in Europe or the UK, each year? There are 2 letters of support from veterinarians, page 24. I won't read those, but I will say, cavoodles are very susceptible to severe health problems, so consider this. At the very minimum, 7 breeders, 2 litters by 5 pups per litter. 70 pups per year to be treated by vets. Couldn't be any self-interest there, could it? A testimonial's on page 32. A purchaser of one of her pups stated, Helen does not financially benefit from dog breeding, but gains joy from breeding. That may be so, but listen to this. Here we have a potential of 70 pups per year at, say, minimum $5,000 per pup. That's $350,000 per year. It's a massive income and a lot of joy for someone who doesn't benefit financially. Enjoy everyone else's discomfort. I'm not opposed to Miss Whiteside breeding dogs, just opposed to where she would like to do it. Thank you, councillors and councillor staff.
Norman. Michael and Jill Moore, with Michael to speak.
My name is Michael Moore, living next door to 142 Bayshore and across the road from 137 Bayshore for the last 15 years. I want to congratulate Sally Beers and her team for the detailed and accurate and brave report. I want to thank the councillors for coming along tonight to help us solve this problem. I wish to address the difference between words and actions that Helen Whiteside uses in her running of a dog breeding business and her new application for 36 Kanyanya, and how her words differ from her actions in relation to how she treats council rules and regulations, the treatment of animals under her care, past and present, the treatment of fellow neighbours. I will table some documents which supports the unacceptable actions of Helen. Helen held positions Mayor of Glen Eira, Liberal Party Port Arlington. She is trained in all the rules and regulations of council and of dog breeding permits. The 58-page report, which I say is excellent for its detail, page 24, permanent site history of 142 Bayshore. Helen applies for approval for the variation of a restrictive covenant on the title, which limits commercial activities being conducted to allow a dog breeding business. Page 36, business is registered in South Yarra. So why is it registered in South Yarra? The business has been operating for many years without a planning permit. The people that have bought puppies over the years, do they know the business may have been run illegally? The puppies they purchased at 142 Bayshore, were they reared at 142, 137 or 36 Kanyanya? We have recently been known that there were 12 dogs at 142 Bayshore. So all the three properties tie together. So some of the documents, the table is a letter from David King, the lawyer. Interestingly, the application materials include a statutory declaration by Helen and John and an admission that they are currently operating in breach of the covenant and without the necessary permits. This is a website that Helen put up, and she puts it up each year. We're able to get a copy of it. This was put up to trusted house sitters, and what it says is, we have used friends and acquaintances as house sitters. She's looking for a house sitter from the period 8th of March to the 13th of March, 15th of June to the 25th of June, the 20th of July to the 30th of September. So we're having house sitters. We're not having operation managers of a dog breeding business. Responsibilities. Morning, release cats and dogs from enclosures. They are trained to poop on the grass, can be disposed to our land down the cliff. We live next door to that. We're copying that all the time. An email from David Neighbour. Hi Michael, with respect to the complaint regarding the caravan at 137 Bayshore, Clifton Springs, I was spoken with...
Is that the last one?
I'm finished, am I? 3 minutes?
The 3 minutes is up.
Yeah.
My apologies.
I've got a lot more there, but can't get it in. Sorry, mate.
We have to adhere to the...
Sweet.
Thank you. Aidan Masinga. Aidan present? No? Thank you. Karen Russell.
Hi, I live at 2 Yarramundi Drive, so I'm directly opposite 8 Jetty Road, and my property is a two-storey property and overlooks that intersection of Jetty Road and Kanyanya. I've written a letter of objection dated the 17th of November, outlining most of my concerns, which I'll try and dot point here quickly. People have already covered the number of dogs. I'm confused by a number of dogs and puppies on the property, and someone's already mentioned the potential for 40 weeks of puppies. By my calculations, with 5 dogs and 2 litters a year of 3 to 5 dogs, it means that potentially there'll be 11 to 15 dogs on the property, dogs and or puppies, pooping, weeing, yapping, etc. I'm concerned about the size of the penned areas that are shown in the photographs, particularly the triangular one that abuts 8 Jetty. It's very small. 2 of the dogs are going to be kept inside. There's a very small area for urinating and pooping, so the smells will be, the grass can't possibly saturate the urine, and the poop, God only knows where 11 lots of, poop a day or 15 lots of poop a day are going to go. I'm concerned that from what I read of all the documents that were attached to the application and to tonight's agenda, that a part-time manager, because it's talked about a part-time manager or a manager will be reasonably available on the property. I know for a fact that a couple of the dogs have already got out. I've seen in this past week, I've seen a gentleman walk 4 young dogs to the property. Maybe there's a litter there at the moment, I don't know. And return he walked it to Kanyanya and then returned back down to Bayshore Way without them. I have also spoken to a lady some years ago, last year. I walk my dog regularly with a friend and we'd walk along the Grigg Creek track. I spoke to a lady who had 3 puppies or 3 young dogs that were from that property, and she told me that day that unfortunately 2 juvenile dogs in her care had accidentally got pregnant. So as an outsider looking in, I think there's a little bit of too many dogs and not enough management. My main point though is I moved to Clifton Springs over 40 years ago, when it was mostly vacant land. The development had been built in the 60s, but no one had uptaken it. So there were a few houses and lots of empty space. Even since it's all filled in, that it's still a really quiet area. Most of the people that move down there are like me and they enjoy the quiet amenity. There's no tourist attractions, there's no big shops. It's a lovely place. At night, there's no noise except the occasional dog barking. There's no traffic. I really would respect the fact that you're recommending that this permit be refused. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Karen. Derek Haima. I pronounced that right, Derek? Thank you.
Councillors, for your time. And thank you to all the veterans that are also in attendance, and thank them for their service. My name is Derek Haima, veteran of the RAN and Australian Federal Police, current committee member of the Drysdale RSL, and representing myself and my partner, an ex-AFP member, at 147 Bayshore Avenue, Clifton Springs. My concerns, as an intel officer of the AFP, I was taught to look at all facets on the investigation. I noted the owner had made it clear that her handling of the removal of dog waste is a possible violation of EPA standards. The owner has, in full admittance, been disposing of dog faeces over her back fence and down the cliff, which then leaches into the waterways. Whether it is their land or council land, it is illegal to do so. This, if proven, is not a practice of proper business. As I have seen this written statement, I have wrote an objection to the EPA. I now have to stop my son and all school kids swimming in that area, that function in that area from Bellarine Secondary College that use that area. This encourages dog faeces can contain harmful bacteria, viruses, parasites, cause illness to humans and other animals. Examples of pathogens, Salmonella, E. coli, as well as parasites like roundworms, hookworms and Giardia. Antibiotic resistance, dog faeces can also harbour antibiotic-resistant bacteria, making infections harder to treat. Roundworm parasites, amongst other sites. Environmental contamination, water pollution. Dog faeces can contaminate waterways when washed off into stormwater systems and natural waterways. I am concerned that at the property at Kanyanya, the only way that that water can run off is straight into the drain and straight into the stormwater drain when the alleged owner goes to clean those areas. There is no other way for that water to dissipate. Dog waste contains nitrogen, phosphorus, and which can lead to algal blooms, I should say. Dog poop can disrupt the natural balance of ecosystems by introducing new pathogens and potentially signalling predators to wildlife. Dog urine and faeces can damage lawns due to the high concentration of nitrogen, leading to fungal growth and discoloration. That property does not cater for that amount of dogs and that amount of faeces and urine, not to mention the unsightly odours. The next side of things, the RSPCA side. My wife and I grew up on farms and deeply understand the size and scale of animals on farms and feel that both sides, for the noise and area to roam completely, is completely unsatisfactory. And we hold grave concern for the females and how animals will be held, and with the fact that we are within 100 metres of each property, we hear all of those dogs barking all the time. We're in the dead set centre of it. So far, this owner has had a flagrant disrespect to community council laws. So far, I have read constant breaches of council laws and little to no consideration for the rest of the community, given the owner's past with the local government knowledge. I fear that the owners are using flaws in the laws and paying no attention to community harmony.
Excuse me, Derek, you're finishing?
I'm finishing right now.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Not to mention the devaluation of property council rates. Lastly, it is a fact with studies of the Reserve Bank of Australia that businesses like this bring down the value of housing in the area up to 59%, including owners' properties. Should the council allow this, would it affect evaluations, rates, stamp duty, ownership pricing, creating a real estate downfall in the area? Thank you,
Derek,
for your time, councillors, and thank you, Council.
Jill Moore is a proxy for Bill Cullen.
Whiteside has been running a dog breeding business without a permit for years. I know this because I live next door to it. The kennels at her property sit right up against our fence. Our bedroom is just metres away. Most nights I'm kept awake by barking dogs. Not for 10 minutes, I'm talking non-stop barking for hours. Believe me, this breed of dog can bark and bark. Puppies crying, Miss Whiteside screaming at them, doors slamming, doggy door vibrating, shovels scraping dog poo off concrete, power hose blasting. It's not just loud, it's relentless, it's stressful, and it's been going on for 15 years. Miss Whiteside also owns a vacant block across the road at 137 Bayshore. No house, no one living there, just kennels. For years, dogs were left there, day and overnight, hot or cold, with no supervision, no permit. I honestly don't know how that's legal. The dogs are moved back and forth between 142 and 137, like pieces of furniture. When she entertains at one house, the dogs are carried across the road to bark at the other, and now she is doing this with her new property, the third property. Whiteside doesn't even stay to care for these dogs herself. In fact, every year she goes overseas for months and she brings in house sitters. Some have spoken to me over the years. I know some were not paid correctly or reasonably for all the work they were expected to do. Most never come back, and I don't blame them. On top of this, our properties are covered by covenant that clearly prohibits any business operating on the premises. That's not a grey area, that's black and white. Miss Whiteside has ignored that rule too. Glossy social media ads don't show this. They don't show the caravan parked on a vacant block where a former manager was left to live. They don't show the puppies howling or the neighbours stressed and exhausted from the sound of barking day and night. They don't show Miss Whiteside screaming or the isolation those dogs are left in day after day. And I saw a comment from a vet claiming her premise are maintained to a high standard. But I wonder if the vet knows how often the dogs are alone, not on a pristine property, but across the road on a vacant block of land, barking for hours with no one around. This isn't a responsible breeding. This isn't a community-minded neighbour. This is not a business that belongs in a residential zone. Please, for the sake of the community and the animals, do not approve this permit. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Bill. Andrew and Petra Kostopoulos. And Andrew to speak. Thank you, Andrew.
I usually like freeloading, but I'll read what I've got, considering it's 3 minutes. Look, I'd like to thank the council, councillors and our staff for taking their time to listen to us tonight, taking away from your family, that sort of time. My name is Andrew Kostopoulos. My wife and I are ratepayers and we live at 131 Bayshore Avenue in Clifton Springs. We were objectors to an original issue in respect to the situation that occurred at 137 Bayshore Avenue, Clifton Springs, which is 3 blocks away from ours, and it's a property owned by the applicants. That was a while back. In that situation, we would constantly hear dogs barking from the property I mentioned. We were soon advised by some nearby neighbours what was going on. Now, look, we're animal lovers. We've had dogs for years. And of course, when you hear dogs bark all the time, especially at odd times, it means they need attention. On one particular day, and I remember this day really, really well, and it was a really hot day, they were barking. My wife and I, we often walk down to the boat ramp at Jerry Road, and on that particular day we walked right past the 137 Bayshore property, and we looked over the fence, and to find there was 3 dogs on the in cages down below, barking, and they looked really stressed. Our concern was the dogs and the welfare. In fact, I virtually had to stop my wife from jumping the fence. We were later briefed about possibly lodging a complaint along with nearby neighbours to the council to object to what in fact was going on. Well, we did that, and at some point later, it all stopped. And we thought, well, the whole thing it's finished. Well, we later found out, and this is down the track, that a similar situation was occurring just around the corner at Kanyanya Avenue. A few local residents and people that we know, neighbours, complaining they were finding themselves in the same situation that we were. And that was a property owned by the applicants. We later found out that the applicants were going to lodge an application for a permit to use and develop the Kanyanya property for the breeding of dogs. Well, my wife and I, look, we're here to oppose it. And along here to also support our fellow neighbours and oppose this application, as I said, and ask the planning committee to oppose it as well. And I'll tell you why. After what my wife and I have heard and witnessed in the past, the applicant's attention to animal welfare is really scrappy, right? This is a residential zone. It's where people live. It's their home. This is, it's their home. It's like what the movie The Castle was saying, when people acquire property on just terms, and this should be on both sides. I'm sorry, I'll just finish by one final thing, yeah?
Please, Andrew, one last one.
Yeah, last one. And there's a lot of the state government, there's local governments, there's the dog people, there's the RSPCA. We know what they think about this sort of thing. And in a recent Geelong article that I read, and it was regarding the Geelong's domestic animal management plan for 2025, and it highlights how the council places importance of helping pets, owners, and the general community live together harmoniously in order to enjoy the quality of life in this region. And finally, if the applicants want to breed dogs, right, Australia offers plenty of opportunities. We've got plenty of land, but it's not at 36 Kanyanya Avenue, Clifton Springs. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Dr. Jack Airby.
Thank you. First of all, may I say that I do not receive any income or have any financial ties with the applicant. Let's get that clear. I've been a veterinary practitioner for 55 years, and I started Newtown Veterinary Clinic 50 years ago. That clinic is still going and strong. I'm a patron of the Chow Chow Society, of the Schnauzer Society, and the Geelong Kennel Club. I am an honorary life member of the RSPCA, and I've received an award from them. I've also been employed or contracted by the City of Geelong on animal issues by Mr. Sotomarco many years ago. Over that time, I have had many breeders of clients, and I've seen many, many good ones and some not so good. In my opinion, and this is where we have a disagreement, I think Helen Whiteside is one of the best. My experience of her attention to animal welfare, her attention to puppies, and her attention to detail in many, many ways differs from what I've just heard. I hold her in highest respect, and I think rather than denigrate her, to me she is the gold standard. She's an example of good breeding and good animal welfare. I'm sorry that I disagree with our honourable members on my left. The barking issue seems to be a problem. However, it puzzles me because dogs who bark incessantly are pathologically in trouble from strong anxiety problems and other problems. In my experience, none of Helen's dogs suffer from those anxieties. Therefore, I find it very difficult to understand why there would be incessant barking. I think, Helen, I would say to anyone who's going to have kennels or breeding, is an example which I should be shown to them in the way in which they should go. I think rather than stop this permit, I think it should be encouraged, and she should be given as an example for the City of Geelong in terms of animal welfare and breeding. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Jessica Maher.
My name is Jessica Ma. I've been a resident of Geelong for as long as I can remember. I am a returned service Navy veteran with 12 years and 11 months service to Australia. During that service, I spent a lot of time on different vessels, even some time at war in Iraq. I was medically discharged with a range of issues, depression, PTSD, back, leg issues, and was not in the best place. I went to an assistance dog program and saw 2 dogs that came from Helen Whiteside. One was to an army major and one to a policewoman. Their dogs, both a cavoodle and a toy poodle, excelled and had a great nature about them. As I continued, I thought this would be a viable pathway forward for me with all my limitations needed. I needed a specific dog. Allergies, obviously weight restrictions, if the dog pulled, things like that. Ellen invited me to her house. It was clean, quiet, and I got to meet the mum and dad dogs. They were well cared for, vet checked, blood tested, microchipped and vaccinated. I was quite jealous of her having such beautiful dogs, puppies and surrounds. So much often I state when people ask me about the breeder, it's so amazing, I swear I would just pop a swag out and stay there myself if I could. Helen gave me my dog. She didn't charge me for it, even though I thought if she hadn't, I would have saved up for her because the traits of her dogs are exceptional. To say that my dog has saved my life is literal. I wouldn't be here without Helen or Harlow, my dog. She's also very important. She goes everywhere with me. I wouldn't leave the house without her. She has been to the hospital to visit other veterans. They've had surgery. Harlow wakes me from having a nightmare. She tells me it's walk time to bring me my shoe. She doesn't bark 24/7 like the other dogs. Like, that would have driven me crazy. She also understands when people are upset or worried, she'll go to them, which is a nice presence about a dog. I've had so many struggles, but to say that I owe my life to Harlow and her, I wouldn't be here. She helps me with everything, gets me out of the house, gets me attending places, social outings. Thank you. I even went away in a caravan, which I haven't done for years. I can't advocate for her enough, and the caring that she gives to her dogs, and insists on the people that she chooses to get her dogs. She's amazing and a really good person and breeder. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Sophia Adams.
My name is Sophia Adams, and I'd like to start by thanking you for giving me the opportunity to be here today. I met Helen in January 23 when she was looking for support with her business, and I was immediately struck by a few things when I first met her. Her questions tested me on everything from ensuring I had the right temperament to work with animals, through to my willingness to undertake the domestic animal breeding training course, and my capacity to spend time with her to learn on the job as well. She insisted I stay for several days at a time at different times to shadow her as she showed me how she did everything, from helping dogs get pregnant, tying, to helping them give birth, whelping, and everything in between. What to feed the bitches at different times, how to feed pups when their mums couldn't, and so much more. Helen also taught me her rules around ensuring the dogs are trained from very early to not bark unless provoked, and even then they need to be stopped once it's determined there's no danger. Since we met, I've lived at both Kanyana and 142 Bayshore Avenue, but mainly at Kanyana. And during that time I can confirm the following. Not once has there been an audit done on the business, nor have any members of the council spent any time visiting to see the premises and how well cared for, trained and loved the dogs are. Neither has any of the people that have given evidence against Helen visited the premises. I worked from home 4 days per week, so the dogs were rarely left on their own. Following Helen's training, if the dogs ever barked, whilst I was home, which was the majority of the time, they would be stopped once it was assessed there was nothing wrong. And very early on, you can see the examples of the two dogs we have here today. There is no barking. Whilst living at Kanyana, the Alsatian next door and the Alsatian across the road would bark incessantly for large blocks of time. So would dogs at the back of our properties. I've taken multiple videos showing these dogs barking and also videos of the dogs in my care not making a sound whilst these dogs bark. I've watched Helen birth and nurture pups who the vet said should not have survived. Young Sammy, who's behind me in Helen's arms, was born to a loving mum with no milk. I watched Helen stay up for 3 days straight, feeding him every 20 minutes and then working with the mum so that she could still bond with him. I've never heard of a dog breeder with this kind of commitment and love for her animals, and certainly no puppy farm on earth would do this. The dogs are walked every day. They have a swimming pool, a large number of toys that are rotated to keep them entertained, and are socialised in a broad range of environments. This helps prevent dogs from being bored and then barking, unlike the others in the neighbourhood. Helen has a wonderful garden full of fresh produce, which she has shared with me during my time there. She says it's too much for her and her husband. one more. And she loves to cook and shares these. I have read the allegations that this is now considered by some bribery. I consider this ridiculous accusation, and I'm sorry if this is an indictment of our society today. Every single dog I've looked after for Helen has been consistently cared for in the same way, with love, commitment, training, discipline and care. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Paul Burke.
Thank you, councillors. I'm assuming that everyone's got the letter of support that I put in, so I won't concentrate on that. But what I have concentrated on is your council plan, which is more often than not considered the councillor's document. It's about how you want things to be in the city and how you want it to develop. And I've gone through that in quite some detail. The planning report completely ignores it. There's no mention of the council plan or its objectives and principles at all. The application before you meets a number of very important priorities in the strategic direction spelt out in what is your councillor plan, which makes it all the more bewildering that the council plan is not mentioned by the officers in the planning report. The planning application before you has the effect of contributing towards sustaining the economy of Geelong. Helen's business spends tens of thousands of dollars in local businesses such as veterinarian clinics, pet supply chains and other connected businesses, thus sustaining jobs in the local economy. That money in turn supports thousands of other local businesses as people being paid then spend in other local businesses in Geelong. There are libraries full of studies showing that pet ownership is a significant contributor to mental health outcomes. Pet ownership encourages exercise and good health, another aim of your council plan. The plan seems to be realised by other parts of the council as your open space is generously supplied with dog litter bag dispensers and waste bins that recognise the importance of pet ownership across the community of Geelong. Dog ownership adds to Geelong's happiness index. I'd now like to turn to the planning officer's report. In reading the officer's report, I had to continually remind myself that the planning application before the council is for 36 Kanyanya Avenue, Clifton Springs. Why did I need to do that? Because the number of times the officers mentioned sites that are not a part of the planning application before the council is quite astounding. The applicant is entitled to expect that the council will determine the planning application they have submitted, which is for 36 Kanyana Avenue and not sites in Bayshore Avenue. The applicant is entitled to expect natural justice and procedural fairness from the council in the determination of their planning application. The applicant is entitled to a fair, balanced and unbiased approach from the council officers. In my opinion, this is one of the strangest planning reports I have ever read. On page 6 of 56, at the 6th bullet point, the officers say in part, quote, all departments have not objected to the use of the land for dog breeding. But then comes the kicker. They go on to say, quote, that said, local laws have raised barking dogs are a significant concern for neighbouring residents, particularly in a residential area, unquote. I can only assume that this officer's comment relates to the planning application for 36 Kanyana Avenue, because that is what you are considering. You are not considering a report on dog ownership in the city of Geelong. In their commentary, the officers produce no evidence whatsoever, nor do they tie the commentary to the site at 36 Kanyana Avenue. The comment is without any site location or context and in my view is entirely gratuitous and gives the impression of being designed as part of an effort to refuse this planning application. Nearly there, councillor. If you want some real context and you want to hear barking dogs, literally hundreds of them, then stand at the top of Jetty Road and watch them being walked down to the boat ramps and along the elevated cliff-top coastal pathway from the junction of Bayshore Avenue and the Jetty Road to the Clifton Springs Beach and beyond. Most of them are off-leash and most of them are barking. Councillor, just one question before I do finish. Have officers produced for you tonight an alternative recommendation for approval that you can consider?
When we have these planning committees, Paul, there's always an alternative recommendation produced in case it goes in that direction. Because it's a planning matter, if it's refused or accepted, there has to be a reason for that. So rather than do it on the fly, there is always one presented in the opposite to what the officers have recommended, which is standard practice.
One is available to you?
Yes. Now, Michelle Power, her letter has been supplied to councillors, okay, which was done this afternoon. Dr. Jeff Ross.
I emailed you today, and Michelle Power emailed you today confirming I was her proxy. She wanted to be here tonight, but she was not notified in time and she was unable to schedule. She asked to be allowed to be heard by...
I understand that, John. The issue is that you're the applicant, so we can't have you reading as a proxy.
You didn't inform me of that after I told you and after Michelle told you I was nominated as her proxy.
Gillett, I did send you an email to advise you of that. I appreciate your words. I said it was up to the committee chair, but I raised that with you in my email that I did send it roughly about 3:30 p.m. today. I have a copy of that if you'd like to see it.
And the problem, John, is you're the applicant too, so...
Well, in that case...
All councillors have received the letter.
Well, in that
John?
case, maybe, Mr Chair, you should read it, because Michelle Power feels that she has been disenfranchised, and I might say there were 17 supporters who didn't get notice, whose support was not reflected in the officer report. So it's very important. Michelle has a representative of many, many people who were not invited and whose document was not reported in the officer's report. And if Michelle Power, I suspect Michelle Power is actually watching this, because that was all that was made available.
No, I understand, John, but the letter's been provided to us and we read it this afternoon. So we've all the councillors have had the letter provided to them.
I'm refused permission. I will sit down. Thank you, Chair.
Ross? No, okay. That's right, you were down as a speaker. Okay. So we've got Alison Milner on behalf of the applicant. Been added, John?
I apologise, we had Jane Miller down as attending but not as speaking. Leave it to the committee chair.
That's okay, if you want, that's fine. No. What it is all objectors have 3 minutes, all supporters have 3 minutes, then the applicant or the person speaking on behalf of the applicant has 10 minutes in total. This is the last person who's speaking in support, and then so Jane has 3 minutes, and then the applicant has 10 minutes to speak, up to 10 minutes.
Well, how many of them come from Kanyanya Avenue or the surrounding area?
Look, it's where someone as an objector or supporter comes from is not an issue, okay? Anyone can object or support an issue, a planning application. So we'll let Jane speak for 3 minutes and then we'll allow the applicant to have their say.
Okay, thank you for your time. I'll be quick because I'll be nervous and rabbiting on really quickly. I'm Dr. Jane Miller and I'm here as a supporter. I've got a Bachelor of Science degree majoring in pharmacology from the University of Melbourne and a Bachelor of Veterinary Science from the University of Queensland. I'm a small animal vet with over 20 years experience and I've been the owner and director of Newtown Veterinary Clinic for the last 10 years. In my 20-year career, I have serviced many breeding businesses and can honestly say that Helen's treatment and care for the animals she looks after is exemplary. She seeks and follows veterinary advice for all the animals in her care and will go above and beyond GP care and engage veterinary specialists when and if required. Helen treats her animals as beloved pets, not just as part of her small business. The animals are beautifully treated breeding stock. It is clear that in my professional opinion that their well-being is Helen's top priority. And as mentioned by James, Helen's small business is extremely important to my small animal business, not just in terms of income generated from patients that we see, but also an increase in patient numbers. And I certainly do have an interest in promoting quality breeding, and I certainly do not have an interest in promoting unhealthy puppies, because that is not why I became a vet. I became a vet to help people enjoy their pets and help them when they are unwell. I do not advocate for poor breeding. Finally, I did read the report, and much of the report did not reconcile with my personal experience with Helen as a breeder, a dog lover, a businesswoman and a community-minded individual. I have visited the Bayshore site, which is obviously not under discussion tonight, but I've been there on multiple occasions and have always found it to be clean, quiet and calm. She is an exceptional dog breeder, and I'm pleased to be a supporter for her here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. So, one second. So we've got Alison Milner on behalf of the applicant. Thank you, Alison.
Hopefully I can get through what needs to be said in the 10 minutes. Before I begin with the permit applicant's presentation, I'm compelled to express my client's serious grievances with the council process, assessment and presentation of the application you're being asked to consider this evening, which they feel has been highly unbalanced and misleading and has allowed misgivings and untruths to be emphasised and perpetuated. Of greatest concern is that despite multiple invitations, you are being asked by council officers tonight to determine an application recommended for refusal that has not been informed by a site inspection to actually or properly interrogate their concerns or those concerns of objectors. This application relates to a long-established and well-reputed small-scale home-based business of Miss Helen Whiteside, along with her husband, Mr. John Gillette, who has training experience and established procedures for keeping and breeding dogs. Ms Whiteside's existing business is established at her home in nearby Bayshore Avenue, from where she's conducted it for the better part of the last 2 decades, and at which location Greater Geelong City Council has taken an active role in validating, approving and supporting that ongoing use over time. In Bayshore Avenue, Ms Whiteside has been the beneficiary of both a council-issued multiple animal permit and in more recent years, a domestic animal business permit. Working with senior council officers and relevant council departments, Ms Whiteside has consistently complied with council and regulatory requirements, paid fees and been subject to audits as required by council. Over the course of this long-standing operational history, council has made my clients aware of no more than one formal complaint about the operation of the business. That complaint related to noise. The complaint did not result in any council requirement for remedial action. My clients are, in this context, grossly offended by unsubstantiated suggestions and non-refuted submissions to council that the existing conduct of their business in Bayshore Avenue is in any way illegal or poorly conducted or managed. Ms Whiteside has a full list of credentials, which I'm not going to waste my time repeating to you, other than to say that she's a member of the Responsible Breeders Association. She's a registered nurse. She's a long-established history with breeding animals. Ms Whiteside breeds small dogs that are no more than approximately 4 to 8 kilograms in weight. The dogs are owned or very well known to Ms Whiteside, and you might call them part of my client's family. Because of this, and unlike a commercial dog kennel or boarding facility where various dog breeds from different and unknown environments might be temporarily accommodated away from their homes, Ms Whiteside has an inherent bond, understanding and knowledge of her dog's particular needs and behavioural requirements. The at least 17 letters of support for the proposal submitted to council, including from 2 highly respected senior veterinarians and multiple celebrated and upstanding members of the Greater Geelong and wider community, are testimony to the quality, highly respectful, caring, ethical and generous practice of Ms Whiteside. My clients purchased the property at 36 Kanyanya Avenue approximately 18 months ago. It is an older property that had been previously let to multi-persons at low cost. Since acquiring the property, my clients have undertaken some modest works and improvements. including painting and landscaping to generally improve it, secure it and make it comfortable to live in. They've replaced a previously older and partially dilapidated high front fence and have undertaken some minor buildings and works to the existing garage structure, including the erection of some low-rise external fencing to support the use of that space for the keeping of up to 2 dogs alongside the occupation of the existing dwelling. Council is aware that within the general residential zone, the planning scheme allows the keeping and breeding of 2 dogs without the requirement for a permit. What does not appear to have been made clear in the reporting of this matter is that the planning scheme also contains certain exemptions for buildings and works associated with a single dwelling and buildings and works associated with dog houses and other domestic animal enclosures associated with the use of the land for a dwelling. My client's earlier undertaking of works at their property was undertaken in good faith. Excuse me. The council officer report has generally summarised the proposed use, and this includes the proposed keeping of up to no more than 2 dogs within the existing dwelling and no more than 3 dogs within the converted garage space overnight. For efficiency, I'm not going to repeat that summary, but welcome any questions that council may have. I would like to instead focus what remaining time I have on addressing the core issues raised by council and officers and objectors, as well as the planning merits of the proposal. I'll note a few relevant matters. A detailed written response to all grounds of objection was submitted to Council in December of last year, and we trust that this correspondence has formed part of the package of briefing material that Council has been provided this evening by officers, as it comprehensively addresses all grounds for objection. Among other matters, that correspondence also categorically rejects the repeated categorisation of the proposed use as a puppy farm, adopted by multiple objectors. For Council's benefit, the RSPCA defines a puppy farm broadly as an intensive dog breeding facility operating under inadequate conditions which fails to meet dogs' physical and mental needs. That is not the case in this scenario. The officer report confirms that all council, internal departments and external authorities have provided their consent to the proposal. That is, no grounds for objection to the proposal have been upheld by internal or external referral. The officer report confirms that the car parking implications of the proposed use are acceptable and will not adversely impact the surrounding residential streetscape or road network. The application is accompanied by a detailed proposed domestic animal management plan which provides confidence about the detail of how the use will be managed and conducted. The plan adopts the recommendations of an accompanying acoustic report and is aligned with the relevant code of practice. From a planning perspective, the domestic animal management plan, along with the relevant code of practice, provides confidence that the conduct of the proposed use can be enforced. Respectfully, suggestions that the care, management or welfare of the dogs will be neglected by Ms Whiteside or a competent operations manager under her supervision are offensive to my clients and proceed with no contextualisation for the business underpinning this proposal, including an understanding and or appreciation for my client's long-standing history as a reputable, quality and ethical dog breeder in Greater Geelong. The application is accompanied by an acoustic report and an addendum which has been prepared by a reputable and qualified acoustic engineer to respond to the specific requirements of Council's request for information. The acoustic monitoring informing that report was not undertaken at the subject site, as the site does not have planning permission to accommodate 5 dogs, and accordingly there was and is no way to monitor or model the acoustic conditions of this proposal. That is, it was the expert's advice that acoustic monitoring at the permit site would have been pointless. Rather, the modelling was undertaken at my client's Bayshore Avenue property where 5 dogs were present on site during the 8-day monitoring period. The acoustic report records that the noise monitor was located in the rear yard in close range to the 5 dogs. The council officer assessment goes to some effort to describe the tight residential setting in Kanyanya Avenue, the long-term planning aspiration for higher densities in this location, and the reliance upon boundary fencing for acoustic mitigation as reasons to reject the expert acoustic assessment, and that report's findings that the location of habitable room windows are technically irrelevant. We reject both this site description and the emphasis the officer assigns to the potential housing growth in this location. The site forms part of a conventional suburban subdivision comprising a predominance of generously sized and proportioned single dwelling lots in a northern part of Clifton Springs that is clearly identified on Council's Housing and Settlement Framework Plan as forming part of the established urban area and a location expected to accommodate only modest infill housing. Regardless and respectfully, the officer interpretation and in reading of the expert acoustic report fundamentally fails to understand the report's findings that the noise impacts of the proposed use would not be unreasonable and would satisfy all statutory noise policies. That is, regardless of the acoustic qualities of the proposed overnight dog pens, proximity to neighbouring windows and areas of secluded private open space, the proposal would have no unreasonable noise impact based on the empirical testing and relevant legislation. Council will not need to be reminded that from a planning perspective, the proposed use, and indeed the regular residential use of land, is not required to generate no noise, but that the relevant test is whether the noise implications of the proposal are reasonable. To this end, it is noteworthy that both on one hand, the officer assessment gives considerable weight to objections citing noise while appearing to give little, if any, weight to the location of the source of those objections, which, save for the immediately adjoining neighbours, are removed from the subject site by as much as approximately 165 metres and separated by intervening properties, houses and roads. On the other hand, the officer assessment appears to give limited, if any, weight to the fact that at least 2 written submissions have been received from properties on the southern side of Bayshore Avenue in very close proximity to Ms Whiteside's existing business and confirming that the conduct of that business over the long term has been comparable to other neighbours' keeping of domestic dogs, if not altogether imperceptible. Notwithstanding, the expert acoustic report submitted with the application confirms that the proposal will achieve compliance with all relevant regulations and EPA requirements and will result in no unreasonable noise impacts. Could I just have...
Finish up.
In the absence of any material or expert advice to the contrary, my clients accordingly submit that the findings of this report ought to be accepted and that any noise impacts can be appropriately addressed by the way of permit condition, including as requested by the EPA and Council's own Health Department. We appreciate that the nature of this application and proposed use has raised some concern for the potential of off-site amenity impacts. I just would like to make... However, in forming an opinion about the overall acceptability of the proposal, we would respectfully ask Council to be mindful of the long-standing small-scale home-based business, the raft of expert advice and submissions commending the proposal to Council, and the invaluable contribution the business has made to the Greater Geelong and broader community over 2 decades. A balanced assessment of this proposal against the relevant provisions of the Greater Geelong Planning Scheme clearly demonstrates that the proposal would respect and protect the residential amenity of neighbouring properties, serve both a local and broader role and need, and because of this, we put that the net community benefit would not be served by refusing a planning permit. Thank you. Councillors.
Thank you, Alison. Do any councillors have questions of the applicant? Councillor Sinclair.
I have a question around the operations manager that's meant to be on site. So is this a remunerated position that has a JD associated with it and goes through an employment, like a recruitment process, or how is that position
Councillor, could
appointed?
I ask Ms Whiteside to join me at the table, please?
Thank you. Look, there isn't a manager at the moment because there's only 2 dogs and we'll be looking for a permit. So if we do get the permit, there would be up to 5 dogs, not particular breeding, but just the keeping of 5, up to 5 dogs. And we would appoint a manager and there would be remuneration and there'd be training. And that manager would be supervised but well trained in animal husbandry, looking after the dog, keeping things clean. Yes, there would be an employment agreement. Thank you.
Any other councillors have questions? Thank you. Any councillors have questions of the officers? No? Councillor Sinclair, please.
So there's a number of objectives that have made comments or raised concerns around health and environmental impact. Was there anything in the EPA response or our health department response to address that?
They'll also need a permit from local laws. So a lot of the welfare side of things would be looked at by them separately. In terms of dealing with waste and that sort of thing, there's conditions on the planning permit that require no stormwater or wastewater to be taken off-site, so it's all got to be managed on-site. And our waste department have confirmed that the dog feces can be put into the local bin system as well. So does that address? Yep.
Any councillors have any further questions? So as per page 9 of the report, there's a recommendation before the Planning Committee that the responsible authority, having considered all matters which the Planning and Environment Act 1987 require it to consider, decides to refuse to grant a planning permit for use and development of land to keep and breed up to 5 domestic animals, dogs, at 36 Kanyanya Avenue, Clifton Springs, on the following grounds, which are listed on page 9 of the report. I won't read them all out in the interests of time. Do I have a mover for that motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move the motion.
Councillor Sullivan. Is there a seconder? Councillor Burson. Councillor Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't speak at length. Thank you, everybody's coming to speak on all sides of this application we have before us tonight. I know what we're having here is not a debate about the validity or accountability of the running of the business, but it's simple, in my view, a planning matter. What holds by our planning scheme and what will hold up at BCAT as well. And for that matter, I endorse the officer's recommendation. It's thorough. I believe that it stands the test, and with that, I'm moving the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Burson.
Yeah, I'd like to second what Trent was saying there. I do agree that having people's character drawn through the mud without any actual proof or evidence is a bit unfair to be had on here. I noticed there's mentions of bribes and all sorts of other things, and veterans' character being drawn in here without any evidence. And as a ex-police officer, that's not something that I would listen to in future. However, if there was any evidence, you're welcome to do that, but this seems to be just purely a planning issue and mainly about noise and similar about the amount of dogs that are on here. So thank you very much for everyone's submissions, but we're a council about planning, not about people's character and things like that. So I apologise for people that have been offended having their character questioned, and I also note that there's people that are actually from the area here, and the support seems to be character support and people with issues with the noise and stuff over on either side. So there seems to be 2 separate issues, and ours is purely on the planning. So thanks for your time, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Burson. Any other councillors wish to speak? Yeah, Councillor Sinclair.
Yeah. Just very briefly, thank you to everyone for the time in preparing your submissions, and particularly wanted to acknowledge Jessica and your bond with your dog, and I can see the love there. And I can see the love with all of the dogs here tonight. I do feel that some of those issues raised around noise in relation to the appropriateness of use in a residential area is something that we need to seriously consider. But just echoing my fellow councillors' statements about this is not about character, this is not about perceptions that the welfare of the dogs are not being maintained, because we can see that that's not the case here tonight. But yeah, it is a question about planning as we take this under consideration. But thank you everyone for your participation tonight.
Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Sullivan to close.
Nothing further, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Well, I'll put the motion before the Planning Committee to the vote. Those in favour of the motion to refuse? Those against? The motion is refused, and as I said earlier, if anyone wishes to take this further up to VCAT, they certainly can. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.